Hi and welcome to the show. I'm your host Patrick Shearer and you're watching In the Studio. The show is brought to you by Davis Media Access and is broadcast on Davis Community Television. That's Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T Uverse Menu 99. My guest today is Lynn Weaver, the new hosting intern for Davis Media Access and for In the Studio. Lynn, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
It must be a bit weird. You've spent most of your time on this side of the couch and now you're on the other one.
No, actually, I feel very happy to be interviewed by you. And you're very experienced and I don't have to worry too much about asking questions.
Well, and that's really the point of the show today, is that DMA offers a lot of different internships, but the viewers out there don't really get to see what goes on because most of it is behind the scenes, whether it's audio or camera work or things like that. But in this case, you and I are the hosting interns, and it's sort of handing over from me to you. So what brought you to Davis Media Access in the first place?
Well, that's very interesting. I have a radio background. Mm-hmm. I worked for Capital Public Radio as an assistant producer for the show Insight for over 4 years. I started as an intern and then I became a regular producer, and I've also done a lot of audio engineering and web page updating and all that sort of things. And I wanted to the reason why I came to DMA was first because I love the programs, and I think that it's a wonderful service for the community. And personally, though, I also wanted to give it a go in seeing with the television media, and that's really quite daunting at first. I never realized. I thought it would be easy.
Yeah. Was there much of a change for you going from radio to TV-based media?
Absolutely, and also because I was mainly a behind-the-scene person at Capital Public Radio. Occasionally, I would be on the air for very few minutes, and once, for example, I had to translate. We had someone from the French Film Festival, director, and he couldn't speak a word of English, and so I translated with Jeffrey Callison on the other way, facilitating. Of course, Jeffrey knows French very well, but the audience doesn't necessarily know that, the listeners. And then other times we had very, very short pieces. So it was a big transition for me, not only to produce the story, but to be actually on air and in front of a camera. But I like challenges, and the teachers here are wonderful. They're very forgiving, and the interns are absolutely great. So I'm very happy. But of course, I need to improve.
Well, and we're all constantly improving, and that's the whole point of this internship and the other ones that DMA offers. How important was it to you to go to a community media centre? So many people spend a lot of time applying for jobs with radio stations and television stations and things like that. But why was community media important to you in particular?
Well, for the reasons that I've said, community television is a wonderful format in many countries. And actually, when I was living in Massachusetts, in Boston, I did produce a few stories for the actually for the Lexington Access television, and they're all faded now. And but it's a wonderful format that Comcast or whatever the operator gives the opportunity for. It's a nice contract, in other words.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also. selfishly perhaps, I wanted to build my portfolio, you know, and have something to show of my work.
That's absolutely the point of it. There's no other way I can think of for people to get experience in media, to be able to put it on their CV and hopefully progress further in the industry.
Yes, and for example, not really at Capital Public Radio, but in some of the more commercial stations, for example, when you start as an intern, you're limited to being a bit of a gopher, in other words, and it's very difficult to learn a whole range of skills, you know. Generally you go and get the guests, you introduce them, you make coffee and so on. But not at Capital Public Radio. They were a good exception, also because I did a lot of pestering. That helped too. So here instead, the interns basically can choose to learn just about everything that they want to. Yeah.
And in fact, this entire show is being run camera, production, direction, everything,
point.
Sound.
Yes.
We're all interns, in front and behind the camera at the moment.
Yes, you're more experienced than me, but
oh, only slightly though.
Yes.
Now, how did you find out about the internship?
Well, I came to be a volunteer. Actually, I was doing the camera, I think, or I was doing the board, and it was a show that you were hosting.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, this is so interesting, and I would like to do that. And so I talked to Diane Didowska, and she said, well, try and then audition for us and see how it goes.
Yeah.
And so I did, and apparently I passed the audition, at least the first stage.
Yeah.
And that's how, but the wonderful thing, Patrick, about this is that you're not only the host with a script and scripted questions and so on, you have the freedom of choosing the topic.
Exactly, it's the production skills that are really valuable.
The production skills of contacting the guest, of finding the focus, and really build a story, a balanced story. And that is wonderful, because if you're just a host and everything is done for you and all you need to do is basically read some of the questions, it's not very much fun.
No. So what is your approach to producing a story for In the Studio?
Well, the first thing, it's the story. You have to find the right story. And of course, Davis Media has some constraints, of course. We want to talk about Davis and something that is appropriate for the community, not terribly controversial, but although we don't shy away from controversy either.
No.
And so the first step is finding a good story. Then once you have a good topic, at least that's what I do, this is in the ideal world, not when you're constrained by time and shows.
Having to find people at the last minute.
Exactly, yes. But normally you start thinking, who would be the best person to be interviewed, who could just contribute to the story and make it a great interview. And then you start the process of contacting the person, pre-interviewing the person over the phone. Of course, you'll ask them if they would like to do that and if they're available, and all that coordination sometimes is a bit elaborate, lots of emails back and forth and so on. But once you've got it, then you start focusing on the story and what you really want to tell, that will make a difference or will make a good interview.
And it is interesting that you mentioned the story at the heart of whatever show you produce, because it's something that I've been particularly interested in as well. There's so much content is online, is quite honestly lacking in that sort of content. So I'm interested to get your perspective when so much content is going online, becoming shorter format, and the quality of storytelling isn't so good. How do you see community media fitting in with that?
Well,
I'll jump back in just quickly. Yeah, well, when I say community media fitting in, like, how do you see community media being able to provide the skills for people to actually tell good stories, while everything's moving to a new format?
Well, I think there's plenty of very good stories out there. It requires, from a producer standpoint, to start anyway, because then the guest and the host will contribute to the good story.
Yeah.
But from the producer standpoint, I think you have to have sensitivity, and you have to be a bit of a dreamer, and have some intuition to see the possibility of a story. And within the story, there's only one story. In 30 minutes, you can't really tell the whole story.
No.
So you'll have to choose and narrow it down to what really you think your audience would like, or you think the guest would like to say, or how you'd like to direct the guest to say that story. And that's where the creative part comes along. And we're very lucky in the 21st century because it's a multimedia environment, and it's not like, you can have visuals, you can have a web page, you can have sounds, surrounding sounds. So it's really everything. Everything. And that requires creativity, teamwork, critique.
Would you need the resources?
You need the resources,
the software, the cameras, and all that sort of thing.
An immense respect for the guest. Never, try to prepare it without scripting the show, but never surprise the guest in a negative way, never belittle or interrupt the guest. I mean, you really, and generally people who are in media, they are people who love people, have their innate curiosity and so on, and have respect for people. And especially in a community, like a DMA, community environment, we are role models in the way, and we have to be very, very respectful and sensitive to the guests.
But what is it about your guests that usually interests you the most? What is there a kind of a uniform, a constant thread, that catches your attention when you're looking for a guest?
Well, that's a very, very interesting. I'll try to answer it. Well, the first thing is how will this guest be the best person to tell that story? Whether it's expertise, personality, background, and if you have multiple guests, you try to have a well-rounded group of guests. For example, 2 sides of the story or 3 sides of the story, so that the story is very well balanced. Also, so expertise and how the story will resonate through his or her voice. And then, of course, there are more mundane factors to consider. For example,
can they talk for more than a couple of sentences, or give more than just a yes/no answer?
That's right. Or can they explain, especially scientists, can they explain in lay terms? And can they also be enthusiastic, and also communicate, relate with the audience. And of course, again, we're talking about ideal world here. But the interviewer, the host, can make a difference. Can make a difference in a lot of times. And also, let's see. Then of course, there are circumstances, practical circumstances, that constraints. But basically, also you go with your intuition. Yeah, and you jump ahead. At least I do. I jump ahead and then retrace my steps in a logical way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, exactly. How do you want the story to look like in the finished product?
Yes.
And then what steps do you need to take to put that together? Yeah.
And I think one thing that I like about interning here at community television is very often now in commercial media, whether it's radio or TV, I find that some of the interviewers are very aggressive.
Can be, yeah.
Yeah, very aggressive, and especially in Britain. I don't know if you've noticed that, but the BBC sometimes they're really very, very much after.
Yeah.
Wanting
it's a confrontational
it's a confrontation,
sort of exercise, right?
almost like they're prompting the guest to say what they really want to hear. And community television is not like that at all.
No, it's a very cooperative,
very
kind of format,
and in a very in a very civil environment, and I like that. Yes.
Now, what's been your biggest challenge so far? In the hosting internship?
Well, I'll tell you right away. My first episode of In the Studio, I was ready to have a teleprompter.
Oh.
At least, as a guidance, because my memory is not very good. I mean, I do remember things, but especially if I've prepared a text, I get very nervous if I don't have a teleprompter. So I came here, and the teachers told me, oh, no, absolutely not. We don't want you to have a teleprompter because then...
It's all live, sit down, do the intro, 30 minutes, off you go. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. But that was a little bit of a shock. And then the other shock was viewing the interview. My God, do I really sound like that?
Everything looks and sounds different, yeah.
Very different. Oh, I'm so bad, And yet, again, the teacher told me, you have to watch that over and over again so that you'll learn. So then, after a while, whether you adjust or the teachers adjust or you sort of resign yourself to who you are, it's okay now. Yeah. It's okay. And I really can enjoy. And there is something that one of the teachers here told me, try to listen, just to listen. Yeah. Don't try to listen to respond. Because while you are listening, your mind is elsewhere, and you're trying to respond, what am I going to say next?
Yes.
And that's very bad, and that's very good lesson in life as well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yes. And very few people have that talent of listening just for the fact of listening. Yeah. Yeah, because that shows interest in a person, Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So what's been the greatest benefit so far that you've found personally from the internship?
Oh, just about everything. Yeah. Well, the best benefit is, as I described earlier, choose my own stories, produce them, host, and so on. It's a wonderful, wonderful. I enjoy that very much, and of course the environment again, the team environment, the very low-key environment, and we're not rushed too much because, of course, we're taping. Although it's almost like it's a live show because very little editing goes into this.
Exactly.
And so I always think this is a live show, and that was another surprise. I thought that after the show, we would choose the best bits.
Go and tidy things up, and
yes. But that's not the case. So it basically, fortunately, I had the live show experience on radio. Not to get too frazzled when you can't be perfect, Yeah. Sometimes you're the only one who realize your mistakes.
A pause is a lot more noticeable, for you personally than for the audience. Yeah.
Yes. Not always.
Well, what plans do you have for the show? For upcoming shows in the future. To bring to DMA the best stories I can,
and to be the best I can, really, and learn. I'm also interested in some of the technical aspects of production, because I've done some technical audio engineering already, and I'm looking forward to learning that as well.
Good.
Yes.
Any topics in particular that you got in mind?
Well, I'm working on a couple of topics at the moment. One I think is very interesting because, again, here is the guest that drives the story rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
I met an extraordinary associate professor here at UT David. She's an environmental and urban engineer.
Okay.
I think her title is that. But her area of research is fascinating. She studies how urbanization has an effect on plants and animal in the environment. And I think that that's a fascinating topic.
Yeah, altering microclimates and things like that. Yeah.
Yes, and also the way that sometimes, especially in developing countries, urbanization invades the forest, the natural world, with insane consequences for the animals and the people.
Yeah.
So that's one topic I'm thinking about. The other topic is I hope I can say that, fluoridization.
Oh yeah.
The controversy
of
that, especially, there's a lot of talking about whether to fluoride the water or not, and I think that's interesting, especially with people with young children.
Yeah.
Yes. In Massachusetts, for example, where I lived for a very long time, it was automatic. All the water was fluoridated. Yeah. And what else? I'd like to bring some musical topics, like young bands, and have them perhaps even perform in the studio here. Not a whole orchestra, but maybe a guitar, an electric guitar, or a ukulele, or anything like that, because I think musicians have a lot of things to say about life and how they perceive the world, and that would be very nice. And also maybe some literature too.
Excellent.
Yes.
Well, we've got a lot to look forward to then.
Thank you.
Now, what advice would you have if someone's watching the show and they think, this is fantastic, I would love to get involved in media or with Davis Media Access, what advice would you have for them?
Well, I would say go right ahead.
Yeah.
It's your best pathway to a profession which is becoming extremely important in the world now. The media world, whether it's news or in-depth or op-eds or whatever, and of course all that comes with it, all the multimedia pieces of it. So this is your best way to get into the field. Yeah. And it's very easy. You just show up and say, here I am, and they'll put you to work in some manner or another. And then this is mostly volunteers. There are very few regular staff. So they welcome you, and that's very, very nice when you're just starting, Yeah.
Well, and further to your point, where for getting a start in the media industry, a lot of jobs nowadays, there's no longer a producer, a director, an associate producer. A lot of that's all contracting. So, to really, community television puts you in pretty good stead to join the evolving media industry, because you have to be able to do so much.
You're so true. This is so true. You're so right, because even at Capital Public Radio, we had a very small team. So sometimes, people are sick or they're elsewhere occupied. So you need to know more. There's no compartments.
Yeah. You need to know how to be able to edit.
And the more you know, the more interesting the job is.
Exactly.
Yes, which is nice. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much, Lynn, for coming along and sharing with us about the internship.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Patrick, for, you know, I know I'm not allowed to ask you any question, but if I were,
go for it, yeah.
If I were, what are your tips that you would give to a new intern?
Probably the hardest thing for me was the introduction and the intro and the outro.
Same for me.
Yes.
Same for me. Memorize that. Yes.
Yeah, and
yes.
so find a structure that you're comfortable with, and this is just about the mechanics of the actual process. Yeah.
Yes.
Once you've got the topic and the guests and everything like that, find a structure that you're comfortable with and make it your own.
That's exactly, I share the same challenge, yes. But once you have it, then you can recycle very nicely, yes.
Yeah. Well, excellent. And that's about all we've got time for. So, yeah, thanks once again for coming along.
And thank you for interviewing me.
Oh, not a worry.
Very nice to share some thoughts with you.
Great. And, of course, thanks to everyone out there for watching. Now, don't forget, you can go to dctv.davismedia.org and you can watch this episode again if you like. While you're there, you can do some more research about all the different programs that Davis Media has to offer, such as the hosting internship or the other programs that are on. You can watch previous episodes as well. So, yeah, once again, that's all we have time for today. I'm your host, Patrick Shearer, and this is your new host, Lynn Weaver. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.